Hey there everybody, it's Pleasantly Twisted, aka Aunt PT, with another review. This one's extremely late due to a myriad of just life issues that all stacked on each other, so we're just gonna jump straight into it. This is the last DLC for the Season Pass of Immortals Fenyx Rising. Once again, thank you so much to Ubisoft Montreal for handing me a key, and let's get right into it. So this is going to be the story of the Lost Gods, which is following right behind the assumption that you, the player, have beaten a new god. Myths of the Eastern Realm don't have anything to really do with it, but this is supposed to be taking place right after the new god DLC. So you can see here, you've got Phoenix, she's all decked out, she's looking good, she's a god, she's dope. Except she's not. Life is actually kind of crappy. And so the entire premise and story of this DLC is that you're going to try and unify the missing gods, like Poseidon, you've got Demeter's missing, you've got several others that are out there, and the way you're going to do this is to recruit Ash, but as you can see right out the gate, things are a little different. So the first thing I want to talk about really with this DLC is they changed up everything to be kind of Diablo-esque, so I was lovingly calling it Diablo Fenyx Rising, and I was very, very excited to do it. And the entire DLC is in this kind of isometric gameplay and style, very much, like I said, like Diablo, Torchlight, Path of Exile, Divinity, all of those games. It still maintains loot, it still maintains the core gameplay, you're still walking around using a sword, an axe, bow and arrow, and using most of the mechanics that you've had the entire time. I did really appreciate that many of these games you don't really get a decent rotating camera until you're in combat. This one you have the camera the entire time, which is nice, although we'll talk about a little bit later where it becomes not so nice. And then other aspects of the game are still very much present. The fact that you still get your puzzles, you still get to do all your, they're Tartarus again. You get to do Tartarus puzzles again, and you learn very quickly that even though Phoenix herself is a god, she isn't quite 100% sure how in the hell, and we're gonna talk about why I had to jump for that in a second, why in the hell she needs to use her powers and how to use them and everything. So as you're following the story as Ash, you go through and it's the same drill. You pick up all your powers, you get your upgrades, you upgrade all your gear and stuff. The same thing kind of applies with the loot table and the tree system. It's going to be very much like what you've seen in the Diablos and everything else, where you get a skill and it kind of branches out and you can make that skill better using what's called elements. And they're exactly what you'd expect. They come in red, green, blue, yellow. And with those elements, you can kind of adjust your special moves to do certain things. Now, when we get into the mechanics part of it, this is going to get really interesting because I think everyone at this point knows my general stance on the Immortals games, or the DLCs, I should say more appropriately, is relatively positive. I had a good time. I enjoyed playing through the vanilla file. I enjoyed the new god because I like the puzzles. I enjoyed Myths of the Eastern Realm because it was very timely and that was done from their Chendango studios. But this one is probably the first one that I have a little bit of ire with. And we're going to get into that slowly but surely. So before we get any further, Athena does come down to help you. They're actually doing all their communication through a scrying bowl. And Ash is on Earth, whereas the gods are up in the heavens or Olympus or wherever you want to put them in your mind. And Athena comes down and, my god, I will say this very, very plainly. If you don't like the puns in this game, this one's brutal. There's a lot. There is a lot. And here you can see that there's an offering table and you can give up miracles so that the gods can do certain things to help you progress your story. Now again, this is going to be a very pivotal part of it because where you give offerings is also where you upgrade your gear. That's also where you unlock different skills, and that's going to be where you save. And this is where we get into a little bit of the squickiness of the game because it tries really hard to be Diablo-esque, but it doesn't quite get what makes Diablo Diablo, and it kind of hurts the witness because those of you who don't know, I love Diablo. I played the wheels off of Diablo 3. If Blizzard wasn't such an abysmal company at this point, I would probably still be playing it. Because with the new seasons and everything, it's absolutely fantastic. But the things that made those successful was that there is an inherent balance there, and that balance was one that made you still feel like, you were kind of a badass the entire time you were playing. Yeah, you might be traveling, yeah, you might be learning, yeah, you might die a couple of times, but it never felt like it was out of reach. Free roaming in this feels out of reach. And what I mean by that is actually going to be demonstrated here. So everything kind of scales up relatively quickly, and you find yourself fighting some of the armored boys very fast. I am trying to keep this mostly spoiler free, so this is maybe the first 3 or 4 hours of the game, and these are the scaled up enemies, and this is hour 1.5. But the worst thing about this is that it doesn't quite do well with the balance of the hordes, because there's never an instance where you go out and you're like, oh, I can kill some horde and watch them come in and be fine, like you would see on many of the other isometric games you would play. This one feels like every battle is a freaking horde mode, and it kind of sucks shit. When you get to the actual quests and stuff, it's fine. But when you're doing this in the free roam world, like, this is one wave. All this is one wave. And then these motherfuckers show up. This is the second wave. This went on for 4 waves, and these are all armored people. So I actually wound up leaving the fight because I didn't get health drops to come back, and now we have another powered up dude who's joined the fray. I have an extra life at the bottom. Again, we'll talk about that some more in the mechanics, but just, oh my god, the mobs in the free roaming world just do not feel good. And I know that there's someone out there watching right now being like, get good, scrub, blah blah blah. It's not even about the get good mentality. It's about the fact that it always felt like if I wanted to explore, I was punished by having just absolute hordes and hordes of enemies coming after me. And that wasn't really helped by the fact that there were bugs galore in the music, which is how you know whether or not you're still in combat. So there were times that the music was still playing like I was in combat, and it would just stop. And then you have stuff like what's going to happen here. The Chimera's just going to deuce out. Like, he's just like, you know what, I'm good. I'm gonna, that's cool. Yeah, later, dudes. So, free roaming combat, not that great. Gameplay itself, pretty heckin' dang good. But I did not appreciate feeling like every time I wanted to go out and just grab some figs, I had to fight 90 people to get so. Speaking of, I need the figs for something very specific. I need those to save. So everything in this game is ran by currency, which isn't the worst thing. However, if you're like me and you save compulsively, oh, you better have a lot of figs on deck because it requires figs to save. It requires pomegranates to heal, because you don't get potions out the gate. You have to use 3 pomegranates for a full heal, or hope that health orbs drop. And then here you can see in the mechanics, this is what I was talking about with the talent trees and everything. You can do your bow and arrow, and you can use different kind of specialties to make your bow and arrow different. And the nice thing about this whole system is that when you open up things, you can go in and check to see, well, what does a certain color do? So you can see red on this particular node gives another health chunk, or maybe yellow will give you better crit, blue might give you better stamina. This, however, that we just clicked is something that actually kind of annoys me, and we'll get into it when we get into the full synopsis of things. Because your heroic climb is also a skill now. But you can see adding the blue is more stamina, adding the red is more health. Purple is going to be a chance to refill health or stamina. And every single thing has something different, which really, really promotes you exploring and seeing what works best for you. I was a very big fan of the first axe drop that you get. You can throw on, I want to say, a yellow node onto the one that looks like a fist, and that adds a stun chance to your swing. Oh man, that stun felt real good, real good. You get a horde of people coming out, you do a big swing, and 2 of them go into the stun animation. Yeah, that felt nice. And you can see on the tops of them as well that it'll indicate what color you have in each slot. So some of them you can notice they have 3 different nodes. Here for the rock throw that you've had the entire game, you get 5. Now we need to talk about what I mean by it's frustrating. So for the sake of just making sure I'm 100% clear, I don't want people to think I did not enjoy myself playing this. I did. I love a good Diablo. I love a good isometric just dungeon crawler where I could go around, beat up stuff, and feel like a badass. When the game is on the actual story path is when it feels it's at its absolute best. Like, this is an actual quest area that I'm doing to get to Demeter, and this felt awesome. Like, being able to get the perfectly timed dodges, seeing everything that's going on and being able to get the parries, getting all of that engagement that it was meant to be, and it's like, yeah, that's great. Going out into the free roam world, though, I'm just like, I don't really want to explore anything because none of that fighting feels good the way it felt in here. And in terms of the purchases thing, I appreciate that they went for the whole drops are life aspect of it, but those drops are used literally for everything. So if you want to save, you need items. If you want to heal, you need items. If you want to buy buffs, you need multiple items. And all of these items are used across the board for your buffs, your healing, your saving, your upgrades of your weapons, which by the way, you can see I didn't get them all out the gate. And so it just feels really cumbersome when you're having to decide, okay, well, which do I want to do? Do I want to use the monster eye to open up the next part of the story like I need to do? Or do I want to use all 3 monster eyes to upgrade my axe? That's a real instance that I actually ran into. And it didn't feel great because in either direction, I was forced to go out and free roam and still go get more monster eyes, even though I got bodied like pretty constantly and it was just exhausting. I will always and forever just bitch about having to use figs to save, because Lord forbid if you run out of figs because you can't save. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, what I'm saying is, amongst all the DLCs in the core game, I won't say that this is a particularly bad DLC, it's not, but amongst everything that has been given to us thus far, it definitely is the weakest. And that's so unfortunate because Diablo Fenyx Rising was like super hype. One particular gripe that I have that should not have happened, and everyone can fight me on it, they gave us 80-ish, give or take, depending on how much you did, hours of content, where we got out the box, you know, a sword, an axe, maybe in about 45 minutes or so, a bow and arrow, climbing, and stuff like that. Making the climb a skill for the sake of adding trees was not great. Especially since in the last 2 DLCs in a core game, you seldom ran into something that required additional skills that you didn't have. This one, I was 15 minutes out the box and saw maybe 3 or 4 puzzles that I needed double jumps, I needed wall climbing, I needed all types of stuff, and I was nowhere near it. I didn't get my wall climb probably until hour 2. And I think that that is an extremely egregious oversight. But when you're playing the core story, like I said, it really, really shines. Like, playing this dungeon, I could play this dungeon for hours, absolute hours, figuring out the maze, going through the puzzles, having viable restarting points in case I died and whatnot, and having mobs that just kind of felt like they belonged there. This was the best part of the DLC. I had so much fun doing the Tartarus worlds, doing the puzzles, and doing the actual dungeon crawling thing. It just really sucks that it feels like the free roaming areas of it are just really unnecessarily rude. And especially when you consider the fact that there's side quests and stuff out there, and it kind of just makes you wonder, well, hell, if I'm going to go do the side quest, am I going to have to fight like 900 hecatoncries along with 20 bulls and 90 chimeras, another 50 like bosses and all this other stuff to do one quest? It hurts my heart. It really does, because you can see here I'm having a blast, dodging and swooping around and doing all these perfect parries and getting good combinations in. This was great, but I also wish it would have just told you out the gate that this is going to be built so that you need to use buffs, because I wasn't using buffs out the gate, because usually I'm fine without them. Like, that's my standard issue. I could just play without the buffs. And it wasn't until I caved and started trying out buffs that all of a sudden everything kind of fell together. So ultimately, do I think this DLC is worth it? If you have the season pass, absolutely. Give it a whirly-poo. It's a great time. If you don't have the season pass, maybe watch a few more playthroughs of it, watch some guides, see how you like the gameplay, listen to other people who probably have drastically more credibility than me, and see if maybe I'm just being a pissy poo. But if I had to buy this as a standalone, I think I would wait for it to go on like a sale of some sort, to be perfectly frank. There's so much here that's viable, and yet it just aggravates. Oh, I didn't talk about this. Also, your weapons now are determining what your additional skills are. So you can see one axe gives you the stun chance, the other one gives you the splash damage. And these are actually passives. Passives are great. I love passives on weapons. I love things that give me additional tools in the toolbox that I was completely unaware of. But yeah, my overall verdict, it's okay. It's alright. Once you get accustomed to all the people coming in and beating you up outside, yeah, it's okay. But I feel like my favorite one of the 3 still has to go to probably myths of the Eastern realms. I just thought that whole story was really cool. So yeah, that's my take on it. That's my review. If you liked it, make sure you hang out with me over on my Twitch channel and everything, and I'll see you for another review next time.